at the start of any new year, many people usually strive to make the right food choices and have a healthier lifestyle in general. But part of the discussion today is around what we eat and how it impacts the way our body functions outside of just what we look like. So how can we boost brain health and functioning as a way of also influencing what we eat? Spokesperson for the Association of Dietetics in South Africa, Kgadi Moabelo, joined us in studio this morning to unpack it all for us. It's great to see you. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Yusha.
So this is a big one, isn't it? And I perhaps feel that some people don't make this connection. The condition of your gut and its influence on brain function.
Yes. There is a great connection there, because what you eat affects your gut microbiome or the community of bacteria in the gut. And there can be a leakage between the intestinal wall or the inside of the wall of the stomach that then connects to the brain. So there is a great connection there, and we should actually really be careful of what we eat, because it does have an impact on the brain function.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that in a moment. But as we talk about the link between food and certain foods and the functioning of certain organs, right?
Yes.
There are particular foods that you can eat to address, let's say, if you have an issue with your kidneys, an issue with your stomach lining. There are foods that you should eat, and there are foods that you should avoid.
Yes, that's true. So when we look at the issues of kidneys, for example, you will have to avoid certain things that are high in potassium, that are high in salt and sodium and stuff like that. But also when we look at the issues of the brain function, there is also certain types of food that if one focuses on, and obviously for a long period of time, it will definitely have an effect, or it will improve the function of the brain. And I would like to say that a lot of times people will be like, I'm writing an exam. I just want to get myself ready for the exam. What should I eat? So it shouldn't be like a short-term type of a thing. It should be part of our lifestyle. It should be something that we do on a daily basis.
Yeah. And that's obviously the big mistake that all of us make at the start of the new year, right? We want to try and find a quick fix.
Yes.
Which is not the way to go.
Which is not the way to go. I mean, if you are going to, for example, you go into a wedding, and in a few weeks' time you want a dietitian to perform a miracle. It doesn't work like that. So we should actually incorporate all these foods. Whether you have got a kidney problem, or you've got diabetes, or you want to, you've got mental problems, all that has to be incorporated into a daily diet.
So you talk about diabetes, and that's another link that we can make between the foods that we eat and not only staving off lifestyle diseases like high blood pressure and diabetes, but also controlling it once we have been diagnosed.
Yes, definitely. So it's one person asked that, should I, because I'm on medication, can I just eat everything that I want to eat? So it's not, we should be looking into controlling the blood glucose, even if we are not necessarily diabetic, because elevated blood sugar over a long period of time will then lead us into developing diabetes. So whether you are diabetic or not diabetic, we should actually be looking into getting low glycemic index types of food to make sure that our sugar is always controlled.
Is sugar the big evil that it's made out to be?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about. It depends on what condition are we looking at. But obviously, in excessive amounts, it is actually not a good thing.
That can be said for anything, though, for any food stuff.
Well, so let me give you an example. So obviously, with diabetes, even though it is not necessarily the main cause, but if you are going to have excessive intake of sugar when you are diabetic, it will definitely elevate the blood sugar. Yeah. If you are going to have too much sugar when you have got mental problems, it will definitely also have a negative effect on that as well.
So now you've touched on the issue that I've been wanting to talk to you about, the link between what we eat and actually our mental health. And I don't think that that's a link that a lot of people will necessarily make.
Yeah, so people do not think that what I eat will affect
my mood,
or how I perform at school, or how I sleep.
Or if I suffer from anxiety, what kind of food might actually make that worse?
Yes.
Yeah.
So things like your foods that have got a lot of caffeine will elevate anxiety. Foods that have got a lot of sugar will elevate anxiety. So it's not just about medication, that I'm taking medication, my anxiety should be controlled. So it stems from food. It stems from what you put into your mouth and into your stomach.
Yeah. This is such a difficult conversation in a context where so many of the people in our country live below the food poverty line. So when we talk about consuming a certain kind of food, consuming quality food, we talk a lot about organic food, the kind of meat we should be buying. That's just not possible for the vast majority of the people here.
You know, I always believe that we can prioritize. If we prioritize the quality foods, we are most likely to actually have a good outcome. So let's say I grew up in the villages. I often go home and I'm asked to speak to elderly people about what to eat and what not. So we do grow beans. Mm-hmm. People grow vegetables. There's indigenous rojo and all those kind of things. We can still really look into what we grow in our gardens or in our farms, for those that still have farms, and it can still benefit us. We don't necessarily have to go to the stores to buy expensive foods. I mean, we have beans, we have lentils, we have all those morojos at the back of our yards that we can actually use to help us.
Meat, in particular, is incredibly expensive.
Yeah, meat is expensive. I'll have to agree. It is expensive, and I would say that. And it's not easy anymore for people to actually grow livestock, where they can actually slaughter a goat now and then. It is difficult. So yes, I do agree that it is not an easy thing to follow some dietary or nutrition guidelines, especially in places where people are not able to afford. But those that have got gardens and they are able to actually do plant types of proteins, they can do beans.
Yeah. Perhaps easier for people, like you said, when you go back home to a village. Yeah. That's when you see and you're able to talk to older people about the gardens that they have.
Yes.
But we know that a lot of people work, they leave their homes and they go and find work in the cities. Yes. And so that's not really possible, you know. So if you do have a limited budget, what would be your advice on the kinds of foodstuffs that we can prioritize? And you mentioned lentils. That's a great source of protein, right?
Yes, it is. Definitely it is. Lentils, beans, so those are good sources of protein. We can also look into things like your tinned fish. Mm-hmm. I see that it has gotten expensive as well. And even your beans that the dry beans that you would cook, they've also gotten expensive. Electricity is also expensive.
All of the prices have gone up,
but it is much better choices, not only in terms of price, but also in terms of the quality of the nutrients that are in there. It is always better to get your protein from the plants as opposed to meat. So it has got great benefits to mental function, to heart diseases and diabetes. So it is always great to get plants over meat. Over meat.
Wow, some good news for vegetarians this morning.
Yes.
So let's talk about, if it's now the end of January, perhaps my New Year's resolutions have slipped slightly. How do I get on track? And what should I be prioritizing? If I'm trying to eat well, I'm trying to eat well for maximizing my energy at work, at school, for school children, for older people. I mean, it's such a broad question.
Yeah, it is.
But what should I be prioritizing? And perhaps part of that answer will be around, it has to be a lifestyle change, right? It can't be just a 3-month thing that you're trying to do. Yeah.
Yes, I would say that look at your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who likes sweet things, start by saying, I'm going to now challenge myself to put 1 teaspoon of sugar in my tea every morning. I'm not going to be using a lot of sugar. I'm not going to be snacking on sweets. Yeah. I'm not going to be snacking on chocolates. So challenge yourself to do such kind of things, because obviously we're different people with different types of weights and body structures coming from different environments. So our goals will never be the same.
Right.
But it is important for one to actually know what their problem is. It is unfortunate that you still get people who do not know what their problem is. They'll be like, well, I'm eating very well, and I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. I don't think there's anything wrong with me. There's one gentleman who came to see me. I'm like, I don't need a dietitian, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And I said, trust me, everybody needs a dietitian. If it was according to me, everybody would be assigned a dietitian to look after them. But I think that one can actually look at what is their weaknesses and deal with such weaknesses step by step. Gradual always helps us, because if we are very fast to want to achieve our goals, we are most likely to stop somewhere.
Right.
Because if we are rushing,
so make them achievable.
We make them achievable.
Yeah.
Because if you're rushing, which means that you don't have plans to carry on. You want to get somewhere and stop, and probably go back to where you're coming from, and that is not sustainable.
Perhaps a useful way of also figuring out, you called it where your weaknesses lie.
Yes.
Is to keep a food diary. So jot down, and I know it sounds maybe a bit silly for some of our viewers, but jot down what you're eating for a week, and then go back and look. And maybe then something will jump out at you. I'm eating potatoes every single day. I'm having 5 glasses of Coke every single day. Yes,
a food diary has been one of the things that we have been using. I mean, for decades that it has been used to actually, especially for your diabetic patients, to actually track down the types of foods that you eat and the amounts. Because you'll be surprised that you've just downed a 2 liter of a fizzy drink in one day. And sometimes because you're watching TV and there's this bucket of popcorn here and there's a fizzy drink here, and you'll be surprised that within an hour you've actually downed the 2 liter of a fizzy drink, especially in this heat.
Yeah, absolutely. Such great advice. Thanks so much for coming on as we all try to get our New Year's resolutions back on track. Kgadi, Moabelo. Great to see you, Kgadi. Thanks very much. She's the spokesperson for the Association of Dietetics here in South Africa. Some great advice as we all try to get our New Year's resolutions insofar as food and eating is